Hello and welcome. Today we are discussing Standard 2070, which is about the external service provider and the organizational responsibility for internal auditing. This is regarding outsourcing the internal audit function. This is the last standard of series 2000, which we started with the standard 2000 about the managing in the internal audit activity. And now this is the last standard number 2070, and we will be concluding the series 2000. So as per our practice, let's ask some interesting questions relevant to this standard, and all along the line we'll get the answers of these questions. What is important to know while outsourcing internal audit function? Does an organization is released from the responsibility after outsourcing? What quality assurance and improvement program must include? What is organizational responsibility and how it is demonstrated? If contractually an external service provider is required to develop and maintain the quality assurance and improvement program, who ultimately holds the responsibility for quality assurance and improvement program? If you're new to my videos, this is Tausif Mushtaq, an audit strategist, control specialist, and board advisor with over 2 decades of experience in governance, assurance, risk and controls, fraud examinations, and forensic reviews. The objective of my videos on audit and assurance series is to promote the internal audit profession in its basic spirit, whereby the internal auditors having a clear understanding of the standards and international professional practices framework overall, so they can contribute to achieve the mission of internal audit. So what's the mission of internal audit? It is defined by the guidelines of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and it is part of the mandatory guidance. And it says that the mission of internal audit is to enhance and protect organizational value by providing risk-based and objective assurance, advice, and insight. So the basic requirement of Standard 2070, external service provider and organizational responsibility for internal auditing, is when an external service provider serves as the internal audit activity, then that service provider must make the organization aware that the organization has the responsibility for maintaining an effective internal audit activity. So let's get further details after reading the interpretation of this and the implementation guidance. So how this organizational responsibility is demonstrated through? The responsibility is demonstrated via the quality assurance and improvement program, which is covered under standard 1300 series, which assesses conformance with the code of ethics and the standards. So it is important to understand while defining the scope of external service provider that what level the external service provider can deliver to the internal audit. The external service provider, when it is hired by an organization to serve as its internal audit activity, it is important that that service provider understands 1300 series of standards and can make the organization aware of this responsibility for maintaining a quality assurance and improvement program that covers all aspects of the internal audit activity. In addition to that, the service provider should ensure that the quality assurance and improvement program encompasses all aspects of the internal audit operations and management in accordance with the mandatory elements of International Professional Practices Framework and the best practices of the internal audit profession. That means that outsourced party must be hands-on the internal audit profession, on the current trends and what practices they are being followed in the industry and in the profession as well. Let's refresh our memories on the mandatory elements of the International Professional Practices Framework. Number one is core principles. Number two is definition of internal audit, which we have reviewed in the earlier part of this video, code of ethics and the standards. You may refer to my video, the link is given, and get more details about the mandatory guidance of IPPF. So question may arise that what does quality assurance improvement program include? The QIP actually concludes on the quality of the internal audit activity, and it serves within the organization and may lead to recommendations for continuous improvement. So the quality assurance and improvement program may include ongoing monitoring, periodic self-assessments and external assessments. These external assessments are normally conducted by a qualified independent party to support conformance with the international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing and the Institute of Internal Auditors Code of Ethics. If we go into further details of the implementation guidance, it provides further detail about 1300 series of quality assurance, which explains us about quality assurance and improvement program. For the number one is that this program, actually the requirement of these is this includes the internal and external assessment that we have already seen, and also the reporting results to the board and senior management should be shared actually once these assessments are done. And also this can be used actually after this program is done, after assessments are done, then you can use the wording of conformance or conforms with the international standards of professional practice of internal auditing. If these are the results, if the results say so, then you can use the word conforms with the standards. So question is that does an organization is relieved from its responsibility once the internal audit function is outsourced? The answer is no. The organization is not released from the responsibility for maintaining an effective internal audit activity, even after outsourced internal audit activity. The organization maintains responsibility for ensuring that the internal audit activity performs its responsibility effectively and efficiently and conforms with the standards, and that individual internal auditors conform with the standards and the code of ethics. So what does the quality assurance and improvement program include if you want to get further detail? A quality assurance and improvement program as required by the standard 1300 includes both internal and external that we have seen repetitively in the previous 2-3 slides. But if you want to get more details, you can refer to my videos. I'm giving here the link, part 1 and part 2. There are 2 parts of that, and you can get the information about it. So what is the importance of engagement letter or having a contract with the outsourced party? The chief audit executive or the external service provider which is hired to serve as the external service provider, as the chief audit executive, and operates as the organization's outsourced internal audit activity, should ensure that the organization is aware of its responsibilities regarding the quality assurance improvement program that we have known till yet. So typically a contract and engagement letter helps you in that. That contract between the organization and the service provider specifies the service provider's responsibilities and the deliverables related to the quality assurance and improvement program. Also, the external service provider may also meet with the senior management and the board to discuss the organization's responsibilities and the nature and requirement of quality assurance improvement program, and this can be documented as well. This authority can be documented as well, or can be covered by an attached charter, which can help the external service provider or outsourced party in implementing these requirements of the standards appropriately. So a situation may arise that management wants to document the external service providers responsibility to implement a quality assurance and improvement program in the engagement letter or contract. So this may happen. So who ultimately holds the responsibility of for the quality assurance and improvement program? So as per standard 1300, the chief audit executive must develop and maintain a quality assurance and improvement program that encompasses all aspects of the internal audit activity. So we are clear about that. So where an external service provider assumes the role of chief audit executive, the service provider may actually develop and maintain the quality assurance improvement program if this is part of the contractual agreement. However, the hiring organization does not relieve itself from that responsibility. So they still maintains the ultimate responsibility for the quality of internal audit activity. So all the support is required from them for the purpose of a successful implementation and effective implementation. So this is a critical point to understand, that even though contractually the management feels that they have transferred the responsibility to the outsourced parties, but the external service provider needs to make it clear that what is the requirement of standards, and also the organization which is hiring needs to understand that they are not relieved from the responsibility, and ultimately they hold this responsibility of effective implementation of quality assurance and improvement program. So let's see the requirements of other standards. So now we are in a situation that our internal audit activity is outsourced. So all those standards which are applicable on the chief audit executive, now they will be applicable on the outsource, but let's see how this will happen, and we review some of the individuals independently. So standard 1310, which is requirements of the quality assurance and improvement program, we have seen that stipulates that the quality assurance improvement program must include both the internal and external assessments. 1311, which is about the internal assessment, states that the mandatory internal assessment must include both ongoing monitoring and periodic self-assessments. So where an internal audit activity is outsourced completely to an external service provider, ongoing monitoring and periodic self-assessments may be performed by the external service provider in accordance with the contract. 1312 is about external assessment, which explains the requirements of the external assessments, including their form and frequency, which is normally 5 years, as well as the qualification and independence requirement for the external assessor or the assessment team. It's important to note that in cases where the entire internal audit activity is outsourced to an external service provider, the scope of external assessment is based solely on work conducted for the hiring organization. In addition to that, the organization should ensure that the external assessor or assessment team selected to perform the external assessment meets the independence requirements. Then standard 1320, which is regarding reporting on the quality assurance and improvement program, which outlines the chief audit executive's responsibilities for communicating the results of QAIP to the senior management and the board. So if there is a service provider which is hired to serve as the chief audit executive and operates as the organization's outsourced internal audit activity, typically meets with the board and senior management to discuss reporting requirements and expectations. 1321, which is regarding the use of conformance, we have seen this already. So you can use the this term that the activity conforms with the international standards for professional practice of internal auditing. 1322 is regarding disclosure of non-conformance. This standard requires the chief audit executive or the external service provider uh, to disclose to senior management and the board any instances where the internal audit activity does not conform with the standards or the code of ethics, and the lack of conformance impacts the overall scope or operation of the internal audit activity. So the most important part of this standard is how can we demonstrate conformance with standard 2070. So there are several ways we can demonstrate this. Number one, the contract engagement letter between the organization and the external service provider, which may offer evidence of organization's responsibility related to maintaining a quality assurance and improvement program. The two primary products of these responsibilities are the documented quality assurance and improvement program and the results of the internal and external assessments. For internal assessments, documentation typically consists of results of ongoing monitoring efforts, findings, corrective action plans, corrective actions taken as a result of periodic internal assessments to improve conformance with the mandatory elements of the IPPF. Documentation of action taken to improve internal audit efficiency and effectiveness that may help demonstrate conformance with this standard. Coming to the external assessment part, documentation from the external assessor, assessment team, or written independence or independent validation from office self-assessment may be used to indicate conformance. In addition to that, the agendas and minutes of the meetings with the senior management and the board may indicate that the external service provider communicated the organization's responsibilities related to maintaining an effective internal audit activity. Meeting records could also be an evidence that the chief audit executive reported on quality assurance and improvement program results as per the requirement of these standards, and the evidence of such communication could also include memos to file or other written documents. So thank you so much. This concludes our discussion in the series on the series 2000, which is about managing the internal audit activity. And hopefully this whole series we have covered comprehensively, and all these standards are very important if you want to have an effective internal audit activity. Please keep watching my videos, like my videos, and share my channel so that other people can also get benefit from my videos. Thank you so much.